Story 1. The vast majority of the characters mentioned were never intended to be portrayed as typical heroes. Characters like House, Frank Castle, Yagami Light, and Walter White are not meant to be heroes, and anyone who actually pays attention to the media they are in would not idolize them. They all range from anti-heroes to just plain villains that happen to be the main character. Story 2. I don't know if you would consider him a hero, but Dumbledore. He allowed literal children to fight a war and played with their lives as if they were pieces in a game of chess. Story 3. The number of people here who think that main character is supposed to be the same as hero is kind of worrying. Half the comments here are about characters that nobody sane should ever consider a hero, even for a moment. Story 4. I'm gonna get hate for this, but Robin Williams' character in Mrs. Doubtfire. The dude was a terrible husband and father, and when he was given very fair visitation rights, he decided to ignore them and deceive his entire family. That's insane. Also, he vandalized his ex's boyfriend's car and almost killed him, and the boyfriend was a genuinely nice person who was good to his kids. That is psychotic behavior. Story 5. Dr. House is a sociopath who would be losing a legal lawsuit every other episode if any of that was real. Story 6. A lot of them, but I would mention Odysseus. It's mostly because he has the morals of Homer's times. He seems like a good guy in comparison to most other characters in Greek mythology, but that's a pretty low bar to clear. For reference, Odysseus actively takes part in a conquest war, contributes to pillaging Troy, murders a child in cold blood, the son of Hector, cheats on his wife on multiple occasions, endangers his crew by giving his name to the Cyclops just when they escape, purely out of pride. Ultimately, every single guy under his command will end up dying because of that mistake. Slaughters the men who were trying to marry his wife, as well as the women who slept with them. Story 7. Mr. Bean is the protagonist of his story, but the antagonist to all the characters featured within, including his poor girlfriend. Story 8. Most RPG characters decimate animal populations to grab one in 24 drops, stealing everything not nailed down in someone's home. Games love to paint characters like space pirates as bad guys, but even as good guys, I've probably decimated or stolen more in a week than most of them have stolen in their lifetime. Story 9. Parks and Recreation is known to be a heartwarming, feel-good show, and that aspect of it is extremely difficult to reconcile against just how poorly they treat Jerry. It's not just good-natured ribbing. They actively bully him and create a horrible work environment for him. The only reason he doesn't seem to notice is that he's some kind of Zen master or something. I like the show overall, but that part of it has not aged well whatsoever. So I guess this answer would be most of the main ensemble of Parks and Recreation. Story 10. Sometimes, I get the impression that Homelander cares more about himself and his image than the people he is saving from disaster. Story 11. If it were not for supervillains, Batman would just be a maniac who goes out at night to hit people. Story 12. Big Trouble in Little China features Jack Burton, who pretty much gets beaten up throughout the movie until the showdown with Lo Pan, where his excellent hand-eye coordination saves him, a trait that was well set up earlier. He is really just along for the ride, with his buddy defeating most of the adversaries. I love that movie. Story 13. Peter Rabbit in the movie. All the animals, really. The human guy grew his garden fair and square, prospered only due to his hard work. He is a villain for not wanting the literal fruit of his labors stolen by some freeloaders who did nothing to earn it. And Peter is a hero for literally trying to kill him when he just tried to protect his stuff. Story 14. I didn't even have to wait until the final books to be told. It was fairly obvious from the start, certainly by Prisoner of Azkaban. You mean to tell me that Albus, whom James Potter trusted with his family heirloom, wouldn't have known who the family's secret keeper was? Yet he let Sirius rot in Azkaban for a dozen years, never spoke a word in his defense against the Wizengamot Albus himself led. I truly believe his only problem with Riddle is that Riddle accomplished what Albus couldn't. Story 15. Most illegal or unethical actions by a hero would be deemed unacceptable in real life. I think it's one of the reasons some stray from fiction as they get older. Depending on your life experiences, watching a hero mow down a group of nondescript bad guys just becomes less pleasant. Story 16. Many of the characters in cop shows, like the ones where they are constantly breaking the law by beating up suspects, intimidating witnesses, or breaking into houses to find evidence, and it's all presented as though they are heroes for doing it. Story 17. Wanda in WandaVision holds an entire town physically and psychically hostage in a fantasy world she created, so she would not have to deal with her trauma. She is aware of the suffering she is causing, but does it anyway. When she releases the town, it is treated as a selfless sacrifice, when really she held hundreds of people in a mental prison for months and only stopped when she was forced to. Story 18. Romeo is immature and impulsive. He is pining for Rosalind, then abandons the thought of her the minute he sees Juliet. He is a hothead who kills Tybalt and sets himself and Juliet on the path that leads to their deaths. Meanwhile, Juliet is the one calmly making plans and figuring out their way forward. I read the play again with my high school student a couple of years ago and came away feeling really sorry for Paris. There is a case to be made that he was just a normal guy who was trying to court Juliet in the correct way. He was talking to her father, and then after she died, he went to her tomb to show respect and gets killed for his trouble. Story 19. Does Edmond Dantes count as a hero? He is one of the best characters in fiction, but that man is far from heroic in the things he does. He is perhaps the hero of his story, but I think even he views himself as a vile creature fueled by revenge. Story 20. Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2 lives a life of crime, yet his loyalty and moments of morality make him a complex anti-hero. Story 21. Oliver Queen from Arrow starts as a vigilante who often crosses lines to fight crime, making viewers question the morality of his methods. Story 22. Emma Woodhouse from Emma means well with her matchmaking. However, her meddling often results in complications for her and others. Story 23. Rorschach from Watchmen. I do not think this is necessarily widespread, but there is definitely a subset of people who seem to think he is the good one in that story, that he is the only one trying to uphold justice and truth. Realistically, he is a misogynistic and brutal vigilante whose main virtue is that he is uncompromising, a trait that Watchmen is trying to satirize and deconstruct. Story 24. The Fonz. A grown man walking around picking up high school girls. I remember the episode where he might have gotten a girl pregnant. The whole episode was, oh, poor Fonzie, what is he going to do? Story 25. Han Solo might seem like the ultimate rebel hero, but let's not forget he started out as a self-serving scoundrel. He was all about smuggling and dodging debts until he got roped into the whole rebellion gig. Sure, he came through in the end, but let's not ignore his shady past. Still, we have to give him props for his charisma and that iconic blaster. So, yes, Han is more of a gray area hero, but hey, that's what makes him interesting, right? Story 26. Paul Atreides. He is not the hero of Dune, but the villain, and he knows this. He is well aware that his rise to power will be the cause of the deaths of billions of people. The only good thing Paul does is sire his son Leto II, who becomes the God Emperor. Story 27. Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, is a prime example of how a hero doesn't care about the lives of others, even villains. The good news is that, for the most part, his crusade is directed against crime. The Punisher does not experience the slightest wavering of conscience and sends his opponents to the next world in batches. This is his main motivation that has driven him for years. Moreover, he believes in what he is doing so much that he is not even affected by the punishing gaze of the Ghost Rider. Story 28. Michael Scott from The Office tries to be a friend and mentor, but his lack of awareness often leads to inappropriate and harmful behavior. Story 29. Rico Rodriguez causes widespread chaos, leading to the loss of numerous lives and damage to essential infrastructure in each country he visits. Story 30. Indiana Jones sleeps with his mentor's almost certainly underage daughter, then later in life leaves her tied up in a den of Nazis. And that's on top of all the grave robbing. Story 31. It can be a character from a book, TV show, or movie, especially a kid's movie or show. I feel a lot of them aren't as good as they're made out to be. Story 32. The Doctor constantly endangers humans by taking them to dangerous places throughout time and space. Some of them even die on his watch. Even though some of them get resurrected, it still doesn't change the fact that they died due to his negligence. Story 33, Rick Deckard from Blade Runner. Roy Batty is the hero and Deckard is the villain in the movie. Deckard works for an evil government and guns down innocent people who have done nothing more than try to live. The movie tries over and over to show you this, but most people just look past that and focus on the good guy cop movie. Story 34, Otis Milburn in Sex Education is more of a protagonist than a hero, I guess. I know he was just a teenager who was growing up and learning from his mistakes, but in the last season, all of his character development is thrown out the window, and he literally treats everyone poorly to the point that he's selfish, immature, and narcissistic. He continuously repeats his mistakes, and his apologies are half-hearted. His unhealthy obsession with Maeve makes it hard for me to root for him and that couple. Story 35. After Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, I am not sure you can really call her a hero anymore, but Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch. Even before that movie, she did quite a bit of questionable things, especially in WandaVision. Story 36. Gordon Bombay is an absolute horror show of a person. He openly mocks a judge and opposing counsel, gets caught drinking and driving, and is then furious his boss gives him 6 months of paid leave to sort it out. He drives a limousine full of kids across a frozen lake, teaches them to cheat, and then has an affair with a player's mom. He steals banks from his friends on a technicality, and absolutely takes a run at the local Pee-wee hockey coach. All because he hit a post on a penalty shot and then the entire team lost in overtime. Story 37. 90% of what Maverick did in the first Top Gun, I haven't seen the sequel yet, would have gotten him thrown out of the Navy. Story 38. Edward Cullen from Twilight might be seen as a romantic figure, but his controlling and stalker-like behavior is problematic. Story 39. General Iroh, a sweet, wise uncle who just wanted tea, was actually a legendary genocidal warlord who didn't care at all until the war affected him personally. Story 40. Marvel Cinematic Universe Iron Man. I'll admit, he finally does stop Thanos, but a shocking number of villains and threats he faces are literally created by him, even one after his death. Heck, one of his movies even starts by him saying, "We create our own villains." Story 41. Indiana Jones took artifacts from foreign nations while simultaneously damaging archaeological sites. It belongs in a museum. Please go away, you thief. Story 42. Achilles. Read the Iliad. It is not quite the epic story that the Odyssey offers, but its depth lies in characters and choices, though certainly not limited to those two. It is an amazing story. Story 43. Buzz Lightyear treated everyone arrogantly and favorably because, as he thought of his special origin and mission. Story 44. The man in the yellow hat, you keep leaving this monkey unsupervised, and he causes mischief. It used to be when you ended up with a stowaway monkey while pillaging other civilizations' treasures, you took some accountability.